All right, so we're live with the Minvo ProCast. I am your host, Mark Ronick, and here with me, my partner in crime, Nick Nallback, who's also going to play the role of guest today. Good afternoon, Nick.
Good afternoon, man. This is going to be an exciting one. This is like my topic. I love this one.
Yes, indeed. I'm glad to do this with you. I love seeing this process and how you are automating your podcast. And when we say automating, we're not lying. Like, this isn't just, this is like 90% almost. Is that right? 90% of your podcast, even down to the speaker, the host,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, and I mean the big piece of it that wasn't automated was publishing to YouTube, and now it looks like the software that I use, which we'll talk about in a little bit, is now incorporating YouTube into it, so it's possible that I might be able to get the episode actually pushed out to the platform all automated as well. So it's a pretty exciting.
Wow. Okay. Pretty cool. And that podcast, by the way, is the AI Briefing. And I think maybe before we dig into that, while we're waiting for people to file in, I'm pulling up here right now a, what do I want to call this? Well, I want to pull up my Minvo account because I like how we are starting to do as we first start the live stream. The first thing we have been doing lately is sharing some of our favorite things in Minvo right now. And I thought it would be cool. I know what I want to share because I just put together something just the other day and published it to TikTok yesterday, and really proud of how it all came out, all done in Minvo. And I want to find out from you, what are you into as far as Minvo goes these days? What's an effect or a feature that you're really digging right now?
I'm going to say like it's going to be really simple. Like it's not anything profound, but playing with other AI tools that are supposed to be similar to what Minvo does, I'm really appreciating the ability to split the clip and change the view of what the viewer is actually looking
Mm,
at on the clip itself. A lot of them, it's kind of like you get what you get, or you have to choose one and it's applied to the entire clip, or yeah, there's just not a lot of options. Whereas Minvo, if you just split the clip, you can change how that one individual section of the clip looks, and then you can split the clip again, and then you can change how that individual section looks. Like you have
yeah.
a lot of control over what the viewer is actually looking at, which helps make the video a lot more engaging.
Yeah, I'm with you. I've been playing around with some of the, we'll call it competitors of Minvo lately, and I don't want to call them out right now, but I will say I agree with you. There are some things that some other platforms may have that Minvo doesn't have yet, but for the most part, Minvo's got just about everything I need, and I'm finding it similar to what you said. I'm finding it just easier to use and more intuitive. And I'm not just saying that because we're doing a Minvo ProCast. I genuinely mean that. And Minvo, the people at Minvo have told us, yeah, share whenever you want to share. If you found something better, feel free to share it. So nobody's telling us we can't say it. Yeah, I think that Minvo by far right now is the easiest and most intuitive one to use. Here, I will actually pull up my screen and share what
And while
I
Mark is
did.
doing that, if you're watching this live right now, let us know in the comments in the chat what has been your favorite Minvo feature so far. This could be a new feature that just came out. Maybe it's something that's been around for a while, but I'm interested to know what you guys are getting the most use out of and enjoying the most right now.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks for that, Nick. All right, let's see. And all right, so right now you're looking at my current Minvo project. This is one that I worked on a little bit over the weekend. And this was from our interview last week with Heather Parody, and we were talking about hooks. So what I'm really excited about, what I really took advantage of when I put this one together, was the new sound effects or newer sound effects feature, which you can see down here at the bottom. Hopefully you can see it on your screen. That's these little bars here with the little audio icon in it. And what I like about it is how precise I can make this I'll show you some examples what I mean by that, because there are times where I put sounds with GIFs or B-roll to help make it even more what's hooky, I guess, for lack of a better term, to keep people's attention, right? So I'll play this through and show you what I mean. And maybe I got the timeline so you can kind of see where everything's popping up on the timeline. So let's give it a whirl here.
What no one talks about that I have painfully discovered through a lot of mistakes, and I still catch myself not taking my own advice, and I always have to return to this concept. If I were to write down my hook on a piece of paper, the concept might be good and hooky. It might be interesting, but for me to really elevate it to the next level, I need to move the words around. I need to move the most important words at the very beginning and not at the end. So even if this sentence is hooky, if the words that are interesting are at the end of the sentence and not at the very beginning, then it's not a good hook. So here's a goal. Let's say in my hook I said, today I'm going to give you an amazing formula that will make your content binge worthy. That's a pretty interesting hook.
Yeah.
But today I'm going to share with you a formula that's going to make your content binge worthy. And this might not sound like, oh my God, this is so in the weeds or whatever, but creators who are like for real serious, they pay attention to this. How do I put binge worthy at the very beginning, saying, and I'm just pulling this out of my butt here, but do this for binge worthy content. So that's what I'm asking myself in a hook. I'm writing down my hook, and then I'm seeing what words can I eliminate, and then how can I bring the searchable terms, the things that people are interested in at the very, very beginning, because it's almost like SEO, when y'all are trying to rank blog posts and YouTube and all that real estate at the top. It's the same thing with short form content.
Okay. So first I want to comment, there was definitely some buffering going on in this. And I think really that's more so me taxing my computer right now, because we are also live streaming on top of that. And I think it's also important to point out for those of you using Minvo and thinking, oh yeah, I've definitely experienced that kind of buffering before. Two things that I noticed. One is that if I'm just a little bit patient, it will catch up. And it usually lately for me doesn't do a lot of that buffering that we just saw. But if you're just patient, for literally like a second or two, it will catch up. The other thing that I noticed for myself that was helpful was sometimes when it does buffer, right? Like when there's a gap where we cut out something, sometimes that buffering will occur, and you can't really tell, did it cut off the last word? Did it cut off that sound effect? Did it even play that sound effect? What I usually do is I'll just go to, the front or the back of the timeline and start it from there and hit play and see if, the word was in fact chopped off or not. Usually it's not. It's just running so fast that on the editing timeline, sometimes you don't hear it all. It doesn't actually play it all. But the final piece has always played everything in sequence when it's supposed to play. That's been my experience.
You're saying like go back to the beginning of the clip and start it over?
Yeah, well, like a part of the clip, right?
I
so
gotcha.
like,
Yeah.
Right, like so down here, there's like a gap here, and there's also a sound effect playing. If I'm just running it all the way through, sometimes that B-roll or that sound may not come up if I'm playing it back in the timeline. But if I go to the very front of the clip, like going here, then it usually will end up playing the whole thing, the auto, the show me, the B-roll, etc. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, that makes sense. And I will say I'm like a notorious like open up a bunch of tabs and programs and forget that I have them open and start trying to do stuff. So a lot of times when I'm in Minvo and I notice that stuff is starting to slow down, I'll have like Premiere open, I'll have Media Encoder, I'll have like 20 tabs on Chrome, Arc browser, like all of these things going on. And usually if I close out all those programs, it starts running a lot better. Because I mean, Minvo it's a pretty powerful platform, but it needs a lot of energy to run.
Yeah.
So something to consider as well. If it's being slow, be conscious of what you got open.
And look, that's the story with a lot of editing software, especially with video, online or offline software. That can definitely be a thing, especially if your computer doesn't have the oomph to handle a lot of things like that at once.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's my experience. By the way, before we continue on, Nick, we've got to come up with a name for your studio because I know it's drawn attention when we've done it before from this studio. It needs a name, and maybe we'll ask our community to help come up with.
Yeah, I'd like to see what people come up with as far as a name. And I'm thinking even like getting some like banners and decals and stuff like that. Like maybe I can totally pimp out this studio.
That would be pretty cool. I'd be into that. Awesome. All right. So let's dig in to your podcast, the AI Briefing. This is something, how long ago did you start it?
So I started it right at the end of March, like the last couple days in March. So had a full month of April with it. That's when I actually started going daily with it. And then all of May, and then now half of June, or June's almost done here. So almost 3 months, not quite, but
Okay.
almost.
Okay. And why an AI created podcast?
One, I wanted to see if anyone would listen. I think it's kind of a really interesting topic right now because all the podcasters are freaking out because they're like, AI can essentially create a podcast, so my job is going to be out the window. So one was to see if that is the case. Are people going to listen to a show if it's AI generated? Two, I'm always fascinated by the AI stuff. So I wanted to see if it could actually be done and if I could do it. And then three, probably the most important part of all of it was to see what I could automate, not just for the sake of having an AI podcast, but I figured if I can automate the entire process from start to finish, that means that we can automate other areas of like normal podcasts, non AI generated podcasts, and free up a lot of time for podcasters because podcasting is such a time consuming activity. And in a lot of cases, it doesn't leave room for other areas of growth or even growing the podcast specifically because you're so in the content. So if we can automate a lot of this stuff, you don't have to create and make it AI generated and an AI voice and all that, but you can save yourself a lot of time by doing some of the stuff that we're going to talk about here and how I set up the AI briefing.
Yeah. Yeah. I love that. And I love the idea, right? Like you're trying to automate as many pieces of the process as possible so that we can then share that with other creators, YouTubers, podcasters, what have you, and be able to, if they say, "Ooh, I really wish I could automate this part of my process." Well, you probably have answers for them now by doing this experiment. So I think that's really cool. And how has automating your podcast production affected your time management and overall workflow?
Well, I mean, from like a content creation side of things, I feel like just as a creator, you're constantly creating. And I mean, for me specifically, it always feels like there's a ton of pressure. Like,
Yeah.
you have so many steps to the process, like podcasting. You got to plan the podcast, you got to script the podcast, you got to record it, you got to edit it, you got to get all the supporting stuff. And if you can't get ahead or if you find yourself falling behind, it's easy to just always be behind and always feel that pressure. So automating the show, and I mean, it's not fully 100% automated yet, but just the 10-15 minutes that I know I have to spend on it is like 10-15 minutes. I know it's done, and then I can go about doing whatever else, other content creation stuff I have to do that my back is against the wall. But it just, I don't know, it frees up a lot of time to focus on other areas that I might not be able to if I was like fully in and doing this all on my own manually.
It just blows my mind to hear you say that 10 to 15 minutes. I mean, there are tons of creators out there that they want their short form content to only take them 10 to 15 minutes from start to finish. So it's crazy to think of a podcast being even quicker now in your case.
I probably spend more time creating the short form content than I do creating a podcast now.
That is mind blowing, really, if you think about it. If somebody listening or watching right now does both, I'm sure you're like not possible, but it is. And Nick's going to show us how. There's a question that you have received before when talking about all this, so I want to get it out of the way and ask you now. How do you, well, it saves you time, it's more efficient, but do you miss doing the creative part of podcasting? Because now it's also automated. Do you miss that?
Yeah, we were talking about this a little bit before we hopped on the live here, and it's a really good question, because yes, I do. And at the same time, I feel like I'm a person who's always like kind of got that shiny object thing going on, where I see new things and I want to try and play with new stuff. And it's not always possible when you're kind of stuck in this routine or feel stuck in a routine, where if there was a way that I can get that content out so that I can focus on other areas of my business or other types of content that I want to be able to play with and experiment with, like that's what's really cool about it. So yes, I mean, I haven't had a podcast where I was physically hosting the show for probably 2 years now, and I do miss it. But I'm having a lot of fun playing with the YouTube stuff and getting into everything that's involved in YouTube right now. So it's kind of the trade-off. I'm still able to produce a podcast and provide value in that sense without having to dedicate all my time to just doing that one thing.
Yeah, that makes sense. And like you said earlier, it's an experiment. You're doing this for other reasons. And I actually see it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I actually see this as creative work, right? But you are being creative. You're trying to put different pieces of a puzzle together and make it work and make it something that we can all digest. So I think it is absolutely still a creative process, just a different type of creation.
Yeah, I agree. I thought about that as well when you were asking the question, because I do really enjoy that, like, problem solving side of it, is like, how do I connect the dots just so when I click the button, everything just happens. And I mean, you and I were playing with the automation software the other day, and it was like, you set everything up and you get ready to go, and then you click run, and then it's going, and then all of a sudden it's an error, and it's like, what just happened? Yeah. No, okay, now we got to go back and redo it. So it's like, I don't know, it's kind of fun to build it and just see what you can actually accomplish with it. So I agree. It's something I enjoy. I find it creative and gets the mind going.
Yeah. So it's still giving you that outlet that us creators often need. So I can appreciate that for sure. Okay, I do want to get to the demo. And let me ask you one more question. What are the feedback? What's the feedback that you've received so far? Have you heard from people? Are they loving it? Are they hating it? What are you hearing?
It's a mixed bag. I feel like it's extremes on both ends. And I was kind of expecting that, because there's going to be the people that are just fascinated with AI, what it can do. And then there's the people that are like so anti-AI, especially when you talk to some podcasters. It's like, no, you can't bring AI into podcasting because that's what we do. But that said, I've posed the question in communities, especially right when I launched the podcast. I posted the trailer to it and just kind of said, hey, I launched this totally AI generated podcast. I'd love for you to listen to it, and like, I want your honest feedback on it. And some people were like, absolutely not. This is trash. Okay, fair. And then other people came at and were like, this is really cool. How'd you do it? And then some people came in and they were like, you know what? Initially, I was going to say absolutely not. But after listening to it and watching it, I think I would actually listen to this. But I think the big takeaway with this show, the AI Briefing specifically, is that it is a very much a fact-based, news-based, like, you're coming for 3 to 4 minutes max of like information, and that's it. You're not getting these stories, you're not getting the connection, you're not getting the experiences from a host or anything like that. And that was a big piece of feedback, that people said yes, they'd listen to this type of show, but traditionally when you think of podcasts, like the 9-5 podcast that I used to run back in the day, I was interviewing entrepreneurs, and it was my experience and their experience and all of that. If I tried to make that completely AI generated, people likely wouldn't listen to it because they know it's just artificially driven. Even if I made up stories and things like that, it's like, yeah, but you're an AI and you don't actually have those experiences. So it is a healthy mix. The YouTube comments do get pretty entertaining. So you either hate it or love it, I guess. But I don't know. It's fun. It's a fun experiment.
Yeah. Well, cool. All right. So then let's see the experiment in action. Why don't you take over? You can share your screen from the Nick Nallback Automotive Studios. Yeah, go ahead. Go for it, Nick.
All right. Let's see if we can get this thing pulled up. Oh, boy. Let's see.
So this is the AI briefing. I've shared a link in the chat. So people, if they want to actually go hear what his final product, you could go do that. But in the meantime, let's take a look at how Nick is doing this.
All right. So are you able to see my screen right now?
Yep.
Okay, cool. So this is the automation software. Let's see if I can get it to pull up. Oh, it doesn't say on the side. It's called Make, just make.com. And it's very similar to Zapier if you've ever used Zapier before. You basically connect apps. You have like a trigger and it says, if this happens, then do this, then do this, then do this, then do this. And basically, I'm using it to piece together all the different elements of the AI briefing. Now, I'll dive in. These are the two that I use specifically for the show, these top two here. But before I dive into it, I think it makes sense to start with how am I getting the information? Like, what is going to be the trigger that starts all of this? And now, with the AI briefing, it is a news podcast. It talks about different AI news headlines, things happen around the world of AI. So, in order to gather that information, I'll either typically get it from Perplexity AI, which I just love. That introduces a little bit more of a manual part of this process. Or I use Feedly, and there are several other platforms like Feedly out there. I think RSS.com is one of them. It's just kind of like an aggregator of different articles and content and things like that. So I essentially have this set up to give me all different kinds of AI-related news. So we get this loaded. There's other content creation news in here as well, so sometimes I need to refine this, but...
So Nick,
yeah.
Can you explain, just so we're clear, the difference between make.com and Feedly?
Good call. So make.com itself is like the connecting platform. It's like all of the apps that you are going to connect. In this case, Feedly is going to be our source for information. We want to ultimately be able to connect that to a platform that can generate a script and then take that and ultimately generate a voice. So Make is going to basically carry the information from app to app for us so that we're not manually copying and pasting and doing all that kind of stuff. Feedly is more geared towards scanning the web, looking for new blog posts, new headlines that are getting posted online, and it's essentially just delivering those blog posts directly into one place so you're not having to go Google a million different topics and figure out what you're going to actually create the content about. So all of the articles, for the most part in here, are either AI related, podcasting related, or some kind of content creation related. And that's where I'll kind of sift through and figure out which kind of articles I want to feature in my podcast.
Cool. All right.
So you can see, like, just looking through some of these articles, like Scarlett Johansson addresses clash with OpenAI. That was a big thing with the OpenAI voice. Eli Lilly inks OpenAI deal for discovering new antibiotics. So all of these could be potential topics that I feature on the AI briefing. It's AI news related. So with that, we'll jump back over to Make, and we'll open up this. They call them scenarios. This scenario is specifically for the script writing process. And then we'll take a look at the other scenario that actually creates the episode. But essentially, what you're looking at here, what this is saying is when I flag a new topic in Feedly, a new article, it is going to send it to, in this case, Perplexity AI. That's one that I'm playing with right now, but you can send it to ChatGPT, you can send it to Claude, you can send it to, I'm pretty sure you can send it to Meta's AI, the Llama. But right now I have it sending that article to Perplexity. And then it is going to, I think I have the prompt in here. Yes. So I say, here's a recent headline, and this news article comes directly from the Feedly article. And here's some context, so it pastes the article content in here. And then I have the prompt that I use for Perplexity. So I say, research to find out more recent and relevant information about this story. Then your job is to write a portion of the podcast script based on the information you discover. And then I give just more details as to what I'm looking for in the script. Then...
And what I love about Make, just looking at Make here, and you showed me a little bit the other day, something that we were working on, and what I love is how user-friendly it is, even just visually, right? Because I think about using Zapier, and I know Zapier has made lots of improvements, and this just, it's easier to comprehend what you're doing from this screen, and you'll see, and I'm sure Nick can show you, you can add other plugins, other additions to this, and they can branch off of different ones. It's really cool to have that kind of like that mind mapping idea applied to something like this.
I started with Zapier, and I know you and I have had conversations at lengths about Zapier. But this one, it just seems very user-friendly to me. And in all honesty, Make had some connections that Zapier didn't have. One of them being 11 Labs that actually generates the audio. Zapier didn't have that connection, so if I wanted to actually automate that piece of it, I wasn't able to use Zapier, unfortunately. I'm sure people smarter than myself can write code and scripts that allow that connection to happen. I don't know that. Yeah. So I went the easiest route possible.
Awesome.
So once the article is fed to Perplexity, Perplexity takes that article, it generates the script or like a section of the script. In the AI briefing, I do typically 2 to 3 headlines that it kind of highlights and talks about. So it's generating one piece of this script for me. Then what's happening is Make is going to my Google Drive, and it is looking for a file, and that file is going to be my script. So if it doesn't find a file, a specific file, I just name it. The file name is going to be the name of the file for tomorrow's date, because the script is going to be for tomorrow's episode. So if it goes there and it doesn't find a file for June 26th, 2024, then it's going to come over here where it says doc doesn't exist, and it's going to create a new Google Doc. And I have it start out. You can actually type in what you want it to say, or you can pull in information from previous steps. So I basically outlined here today on the AI briefing, leave myself a spot for episode teasers that I'm going to put in after the fact. Welcome to the AI briefing. I'm your AI host, Mick, and here's your news for, and then this is just a long string of variables to give me the date. So it would say Wednesday, June 26th, 2024. Then this section down here where it says choices and message content, this is coming directly from the Perplexity input or output, I guess. It's coming to choices, message, and then content. You can see in here, it says Opera has recently integrated. This is part of a script that was written by Perplexity. So when the Google Doc is created, it gives me all this, plus inserts the Perplexity script that it wrote for me based on that prompt. If Google Drive looks and it finds the file that's dated 6/26/2024, then it's not going to go create a document. It's going to go grab that document, and it's going to add the script to the document that already exists. So I have the document ID that it found, and then we're appending it to the body of the document. And then once again, all we're doing is inserting Perplexity's new script into that document. And I'll do this 2 to 3 times, depending on how long I want the episode or how many articles I want to feature in that episode. And then the script writing part of it's done, just taken care of. So really the only piece that's manually done here is finding which articles I want to highlight in the episode.
So Nick, do you How often are you reviewing the scripts and making changes to those automatically generated scripts?
So I'm going in there pretty much every day. I've actually, for full disclosure, I've been playing with a bunch of different like script writing techniques. So I've taken a little bit more of a manual approach to a lot of what's happening here. But essentially, I would have, as I'm finding the scripts that I want, I would be looking at my, like, here's an example of the script that I did today. I'd have my script pulled up right here, and I'd be kind of just looking at it, reformatting the script a little bit. And sometimes I remove certain sentences out. Sometimes I rewrite certain things. Sometimes I leave it almost exactly as it is. And then once I have what I feel like is enough content for that episode, I usually shoot for no more than 3,000 to 3,500 characters. Then it's pretty much done.
Okay.
But
so
I guess the episode teasers here that I have in the beginning, I haven't found a good way to fully automate that. So I am taking the script, putting it into ChatGPT once it's done, and then asking for teasers, and then manually putting these in. But everything else about this
why couldn't you have that automated? That part.
So the biggest issue that I've run into with that specifically is I would want, let's just jump back to make here. So the script is created. I would have to create another step that essentially grabs that script and then gives me a teaser. And then I need some place to put it. And I wanted as much of the Google Doc to be structured exactly how it needs to be to go into 11 Labs to read as I could make it. And if I did it in that way, I couldn't necessarily say, okay, here's the first article that talks about meta, and then I want you to put the little teaser about meta at the top here. And then when I run the next script, grab this piece of it, and then write the teaser, and then put the teaser at this point in the document. Like, that still has to happen manually, unfortunately. But that said, I could probably make this a little bit more complex of an automation, and maybe I have all of this stuff generate in a single Google Doc, the rest of my script generate in a separate Google Doc, and then maybe I have another piece of that automation is like combining the two documents. That could be something that would work. But I'll definitely have to play with that. You give me a little bit more to think about with that.
Yeah, well, just because if you're manually doing that part of the process, I'm thinking about myself. I would still see if I could create something in Make that will spit out those teasers and then grab them, paste them into the main document wherever the preference is as far as your layout and structure goes. I would just plop it right in there.
Yeah, I mean, that's probably something I'll play with for sure. I didn't mind it because I do like reading the scripts that it comes up with, because in full transparency, it's not 100% on point every time. Like, I give it instructions on how I want the script to be written, and sometimes there's a certain day where it like doesn't follow any of the instructions, and then I'm like, what the heck? Why it just did this for like 10 days consistently, and then you just randomly threw out like a 700, 1,000 word script, and I only asked for 200. Right. So it is good to definitely check the stuff, and another case as to why you need to be checking this AI stuff. But that part hasn't really bothered me because I'm usually looking at the script at that time anyway. But yeah, it's definitely worth trying. If I want to make this thing fully automated, I need to make it fully automated.
Right. Cool. All right, so what's the next step of this process? Scripts are done.
Scripts are done. So the next piece of this is actually generating the podcast episode. So getting the AI voice. Then we want to create a title for this thing. We want to create show notes for this thing. And what else? Let me see. Oh, and then I did have some other, like, writing a LinkedIn post, writing a blog post, that kind of thing that kind of played into it as well. I've taken a break on that because I've spent more time on the scripting side of things. So I want to get these primary steps down to where I feel super confident before I start introducing more complex pieces of content.
Right. And also maybe before you start promoting it, right? Because you want to really fine tune this thing and then you can start really promoting it and sending people to it. But for now, I guess you're happy with people just kind of stumbling and on it and finding it.
Yeah. And so I did pull this up, and this going to be a good break in the technical side of things. For not having promoted this really at all, aside from us talking about it and like the occasional story that I would post about it on Instagram, since I launched this, it's gained 6.2 thousand views on YouTube. And then on Spotify, the total podcast downloads over there is, I think, almost 400 or 500. I think it's 400. Okay. So you're looking at 6,600 downloads and views.
Yeah. And your YouTube is mainly putting out the audio only episodes, right? With the exception of once a week, you're doing a video version of it as well.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I started this whole thing wanting to do video and realized how expensive the video platforms were. And it was going to be a weekly show at that point. And I was like, well, I want to see results. I want to see what happens if I do this thing daily. So then I transitioned over to audio only for 6 days of the week. And then, one day on the Sunday is typically the day I'll post a video version of the episode, which is not fully automated. That one I spend some time with. But yeah, it's pretty crazy.
Since you brought it up, and I don't know if you want to do this now or you want to wait till toward the end, but I'm curious, and I'm sure people watching right now are curious, what is this costing you to do an episode of your usual audio version of the AI briefing?
So 11 Labs is what I'm using for the audio. That's what I generate the voice that reads the script. That I think I'm paying $11 a month. Or it might have started at 11 with like a discount trial thing and then jumped to like $20 a month. Something. That's my biggest expense in this whole thing, is that software. The generating the scripts. So if we jump back, the scripts are being generated, the show notes are being generated, the LinkedIn posts, the titles, all that kind of stuff. That I'm using for the most part APIs. So when I'm sending it to Perplexity, I'm sending it to Perplexity's API or ChatGPT's API, OpenAI's API. That costs money. Every time you send a response or a prompt to it, and then it gives you an answer, that costs you money. So for that, like all of the scripts that I have had generated, let's just take a peek, see an update. So for the month of June, I've spent 71 cents. So to generate all of the transcripts, all of the show notes, all of the written content essentially. And that's 25 days worth of episodes. If we look at,
and to be clear for people to understand, Nick using the API versions of Perplexity or ChatGPT or whatever, though that's a separate subscription than the typical, ChatGPT Plus, for example.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Okay.
Yes.
Cool. So you don't even have to, and so really it could be even cheaper to use something like that versus using their built bots.
Yeah, I mean, depending on what you're doing or what you're using ChatGPT for, you could very easily not spend $20 in a single month unless you're like an extremely heavy user of ChatGPT and you're sending very large documents and large amounts of text through it. And even then, I think it's going to be pretty close to like spending that $20 a month. I use this API a lot, and $1.46 I think is the most I've spent in a month.
Wow.
Just checking. Cool. Oh, sorry, April was because I was using a more expensive model, which turned out to be the worst model. But
wow, okay.
Yeah, the best model you can get right now, I've spent 71 cents for the entire month at this point.
And that model being?
That is the GPT-4o.
Okay. 4o. Okay, the latest version.
Yep.
Okay. All right, what else can you show us?
All right. So, with the script written, We walked through that entire piece of the process. The next is getting the actual episode created. So very similarly, we're using Make again. And the way that this process and flow works is every morning at 4:15, because you download on 4:15 a.m., Make is going to my Google Drive to a specific folder, and it's looking for that file that we created. If it doesn't find a file in there, if I forgot to create a script that previous day or whatever, and there's no file there, it just stops. But if it finds the file, then it's going to, once again, add to the document this little outro. So it's just going to say, that's your AI briefing for today. Thanks for tuning in. See you tomorrow. Then the next step, it grabs all the content from that script. So everything that we've generated plus that outro. Here, it's going to look for a show notes page. And the reason I have that step here is because I wanted to be able to use the results from this step in any of these other branches that I created. So that's why I put it out here. But I could just put it in the show notes and carry out that way. But then essentially what happens after it goes, it grabs all that content. It goes potentially 3 different directions. And we can add pretty much as many directions as we want it to go, all simultaneously. So the first is it takes the content, it sends it to 11 Labs. Super easy to set up here. You pick the voice that you want, which I had already set up in 11 Labs. You pick the model that you want, and then you paste in the content. And then you can mess with the settings. I've played with these a little bit on how excited the AI gets and how stable, or if you want it to just kind of be totally off the wall and unpredictable, you could set that as well. But essentially set the settings for it, and then it generates the episode. It adds that MP3 to my Google Drive, and then it takes my script that it pulled at the beginning of the step, and it moves it to a different folder, just so the next day Make doesn't get confused as to what script to grab. So every day that folder should be empty, and I shouldn't have any scripts in there at all. While it's creating the episode, like the actual MP3 itself, I'm going to skip the LinkedIn stuff for right now, because this one's actually kind of broken. While it's doing the script, it's actually going to ChatGPT. It's going to an assistant that I made in ChatGPT to generate the title. And then it's going that show notes document that it found or didn't find. It's going to create a document if it doesn't find it, and it's going to put that title in there.
What do you mean by you created an assistant in ChatGPT? To do that,
I wasn't sure when
for it to just go to ChatGPT 4.0 and spit out titles.
So when we were looking at Perplexity, that was an example of where we had the prompt right in Perplexity or inside Make. We just put the prompt in on what we actually wanted Perplexity to do. If we open up this episode title one, you can see the content that it's pulling from the script is here, but there are no prompts in this at all. All I'm doing is telling it to send that information to podcast title generator, the AI briefing, and this is an assistant. So if we come back to OpenAI, we go to assistants, this is very similar to what, if you're familiar with the custom GPTs in ChatGPT, where you have like the Canva GPT that'll help you create designs and things like that, or like Mark and I, we've created custom GPTs for podcast analysis and blog post writing, that kind of thing. These assistants are the exact same thing, only they use the OpenAI API. So once again, it's much cheaper than just using a custom GPT. But as an example, this title generator, I gave it the name podcast title generator. I gave it a prompt. So I said, create a podcast episode titles that are SEO optimized. It should focus on the story that would be most interesting to the listener. So it's actually going to go and read through that document and find the most interesting of the 3 articles. Include a keyword that would be highly searched about the topic. It should not include any quotes. This is just kind of a personal vendetta that I have against AI.
I can't read it. What does it say?
It has like the little semicolon where it's like title, subtitle.
Oh, yeah.
I
Okay, I've
was
seen
trying
that.
many different ways to not let it do that.
And ChatGPT is not the only one. I feel like most of these AI models, when you ask it to create a title, it's always doing a title and then that subtitle.
Yeah, it drives me mad. Like
Yeah, me too.
super mad. So that's
Yeah.
why that's there. Then you tell it what model you want to use. So this is where we can spend very little money and use GPT 3.5 and get results. I opted for the GPT-4o. It's the latest model, and it's actually cheaper than the other GPT-4 models as well. So you kind of get a two for there. It's better, and it costs less. Weird.
Yeah.
And not many places you can get a better product, and it costs you less money than the inferior versions. So then we have some other options in here, like file search, code interpreter. All of these, like since I'm using Make to run all this stuff, I don't need any of this turned on. But if I wanted to, I could give it the option to allow files to be uploaded. I think that more gets into if you're going to be coding and creating your own products. So I leave those all turned off. So really, you got title, instructions, and model, and that's your assistant. But you can see on the side here, I got all kinds of different assistants, like the title generator, a blog writer, a title generator, another one. I have to look at those. This was a test that I was doing, blog to tweet, and then all these are like newsletter related. But with all of these made, once I connect them into Make, once I connect to my OpenAI account, I can select from any of these models or agents or assistants, whatever you want to call them, that are on that account. And because it's already got the instructions, it's like going to ChatGPT and pasting in your script and not saying anything else, and it just going and doing the thing for you, which is pretty cool.
Yeah. That's very cool.
So that is why, or that is what an assistant is. I prefer it to just coming in here and say just reaching out to ChatGPT specifically, because if I want to make a change, if I'm not liking the outputs or something just changes with how it's delivering the content, I can go to that one GPT, make the adjustments there, or GPT, the one assistant, make those changes.
Yeah.
And now anywhere I'm using that assistant in other automations, it's going to be consistent across the board versus me having to go to this one and then going to the other one and then going to another one. Like it's all change it once, it's fixed everywhere.
Yeah, pretty cool.
So it makes the title, adds it to a doc, makes the show notes, which again, just another assistant that it's going to with my own set of instructions, add it to the doc, and then I'm left with, we looked at the episode script. We have an episode show notes, which it'll have titles for me, and then I'll come in, maybe I'll make some changes to my title. It'll give me, this show notes is completely, this is exactly actually how it comes out of the assistant. I haven't changed anything about this at all. But I essentially wake up in the morning, all of these files are just ready for me to grab. So then I go grab the episode. I do some CapCut stuff to just make it a little bit more than just like a cover art on a video. Like I add the captions on the screen and that kind of thing, but I essentially do that, load it into YouTube, copy and paste the information over into YouTube and Spotify for podcasters, hit publish, and that's it. So that process of just coming in and grabbing the stuff takes me 15 minutes or less with making that extra like video version.
Yeah. Wow. That's awesome. And that's it. And then you're done.
And then I'm done.
Wow. So
I guess you probably would see on it as well. I will do cover art in here. This is a manual process that I probably could automate. I get a little bit more wordy with the prompts and asks that I have here, but all of the cover art that you see on here for the most part is all generated with ChatGPT. I paste in a script and say, give me some ideas for a thumbnail. It gives me a couple ideas, and then I pick one, and then it says, okay, here you go. So I guess that's the other manual step to this process as well.
and then you don't, did you say you do or you don't tweak that art that it spits out?
For the most part, I haven't been.
Okay.
I think like this one here that has like GPT-5 and it says next.
Mm-hmm.
That one I definitely made because it's not anything spectacular. It's just text that I put on the screen. But like if you look at all of the other ones that I've published, all these for the most part are just coming straight out of OpenAI.
So cool. That is really cool.
And yeah,
So
that's the process.
And you know, that just made me think there's a whole other automation thing that we clearly won't have time for today, but we could certainly do another day, because you were working on something using Notion that would help a creator, a podcaster, a YouTuber with their really like the management and the processes of creating a new episode, right? So would you just share a little bit about what that is? Because we could have somebody interested in wanting to experiment with it, and I know you're looking for beta testers for that.
Yeah, let me pull it up. See, and now
And
that I'm
thank you for sharing
automating
what you shared. That was that process is really, it blows my mind every time I see it. And it's only been a few, but every time I see it, it blows my mind.
So, it helps if I share my screen, huh?
Yeah.
Let's get back. Okay. So, there hasn't been quite the need for it with the full automation of things. So, I started using it for the AI briefing, and it essentially just became me putting in information for the sake of putting in information, because I didn't really have to keep track of anything that I was doing.
Yeah, so this is more for the person the more traditional podcaster, YouTuber that isn't automating every step of their process, but they're looking for a way to get more organized, easier to manage all the processes.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
If I were to launch another podcast, like Mark and I, we've talked about a podcast, which we have to revisit.
I mean, we're kind of doing one.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. So I would probably throw it all into this, and I would use this to kind of manage the process from planning, recording, editing, all that kind of thing. And essentially what it does is it acts as kind of like a tracker, if you will. We have an area to plan out all of your episodes. So when you want to create a new episode, drop it in there. Or you just click this nifty little button at the top, and then it creates a new episode for you. You can put in specific information, recording date, release date, links, guests. Then we have a little checklist down here that you can modify and update depending on your process itself. So it kind of becomes like just an episode tracker, if you will.
Yeah.
But then what's cool, now I use this a lot, a very similar thing for the 9-5 podcast. I actually have a database for all of my guests. So if I added myself as a guest to this podcast episode, I can click and I can jump to my profile that I've filled out. And here it'll tell you what episodes they were on. If I had filled this out fully, it would give the email, the website, the last time you contacted them, bio, headshot, all that kind of stuff. So you always have that information available. Or, yeah, this helped me a lot when I was doing my show, because it was just everything was all in one place. I didn't have to go fishing around, searching through emails, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But then what I started doing with this specifically, so the episode planning, pretty straightforward. Put your episodes in, keep track of where you're at. Now I know how difficult finding guests, following up with guests tends to be a pretty big problem. You'll reach out once and you'll not reach out to them ever again. Mm-hmm. And they say that, the money's in the follow-up. In this case, your podcast guests are in the follow-up. I'm for one terrible with it, where I see an email, I forget about it, and if they don't remind me and follow up, I might just miss it. Yeah. I need to do better. But since I don't do better, and a lot of people also don't do better, this will essentially, when you create a guest, let's just create a guest quick. So we'll just call this one Mark. We can put in the email, put in the website, put in all that, but then we can put in how often we want to follow up with them. So maybe we'll say in 5 days I want to follow up with them. I've reached out to him. Well, for the sake of showing the example, we'll say I initially reached out to Mark on the 18th. When I come over to my guest management dashboard, follow up due, Mark. I need to go send another email out to Mark and figure out why he hasn't joined my podcast yet. Come in here, see all the information. When I've followed up with him, I can mark as reviewed. And now he goes away down here, and in the next 5 days, his name's going to pop back up again and say, hey, you should follow up with Mark. So I did the very same thing with the brand and sponsorship stuff because I feel like it's the same kind of deal. You reach out to sponsors maybe, and then you let it kind of die, and who knows, they're busy, their inbox is flooded. It could take 2, 3, or even 4 messages before they actually know you're serious and want to do this thing. So it's the same exact process. But as far as like the automation of things, I was playing with different things with Zapier, and now Make a little bit to where you can integrate some of the things that you're doing in Notion with Zapier or vice versa. It's things like episode planning, and that's not currently built into Notion itself. That would be a separate like build and connection to whatever automation platform you're using. But it was a pretty slick little automation that I was playing with for a while. I just haven't needed to use it particularly myself.
Yeah. Well, if anybody in the Minvo community is interested in beta testing it, they can reach out to one of us, and Nick will hook you up with a beta tester. So yeah,
Absolutely.
Thank you, Nick. Thank you for sharing all of these processes. That's awesome. And I hope that it inspired some people to think about different ways they can use some of the new technology out there to automate their creation processes. And they're always welcome to reach out to us as well, and we can help point them in the right direction. But yeah, thank you, Nick. That was really helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. And if anybody watching this live or that catches the replay, if there's anything in your podcasting process that you are like, can I automate this? Is this something that I can automate? Do you know how to automate this? Let us know, because if I don't know how to do it, it's going to give me something to play with. So it'll give me something to mess with, and then I can share with you how I actually did it. But always looking for new ideas, new things that I can automate, see if I can just basically automate my entire life, and then I'll just sit here and watch my computer views go up.
Pretty cool. Yeah, although don't automate the fatherhood stuff. I think you got to stick with the manual for that stuff.
Yeah, that's true. That's very true.
Cool. Well, thank you all for being a part of this, whether you watched live or you watched the replay. We appreciate it. If you happen to be in the North Carolina area this weekend, particularly around the Charlotte area, you can come and meet Nick and I both in person at our very first podcast conference that we've put together. It's called Empowered Podcasting. Looking to have around 150 people there and over 25 different presentations from podcast professionals, YouTubers, etc., sharing their expertise, their knowledge to help you empower you and your content creation game. So if you're interested in that, DM me and I will give you a promo code for a free ticket to the entire event that goes on from the 28th through the 30th. Again, that's in Charlotte, and we would love to see you there. Again, thank you, Nick, for being our guest today as well as co-host. And we are back again next Tuesday, 12 p.m. Eastern. I believe that's July 2nd. And we are all but have secured a guest as well with another AI tool that I think the Minvo community is going to really be excited about. So we will share more as the week goes on. Until then, make it a great day, everybody. Take care.
See you guys.